guys, welcome to the Boyer Academy podcast. Super excited to have a friend and guest on today to talk about all of her success and her journey and everything that's going on. A lot of you guys already know her, so I'm going to turn it over and we're going to kick this off. How's it going?
Great. I'm Dr. Sam with Rooted Alignment and Wellness. I'm a chiropractor and acupuncturist here in Troy, Missouri.
How cool does it feel to say Dr. Sam? How's that?
It was a little weird at first, but now I'm like leaning into the identity of it. I worked hard for that title.
Yeah, I get it. When in martial arts, so a lot of us like get to that. You know, for me in Taekwondo, it was Master Mat. I was like, oh, it's kind of odd, but it was cool to say.
Yeah.
But it was weird, and then you get to a point where you're comfortable with it. But it's a neat achievement, so that's really cool. It's the first time I've heard you say that in, you know, talking about yourself too. I've seen it printed, but I haven't heard, and I've seen people post and say it.
Yeah.
Hearing you say it, so it's got to be pretty cool.
It is. Thanks.
How long was your schooling? Like, how long has this been kind of process been going on for you?
Well, I feel like, you know, all of my life experiences kind of led to this, but the actual training for chiropractic, it's a 5-year program they condensed down to a 3.5-year intensive program. So, yeah, it's a journey. And then plus awesome. All the additional continuing education stuff you do each year after that and workshops you can take during it, which is how I got my acupuncture licensing. That's
really cool. And what, you know, I think one thing that makes you unique is how it's, you know, you're focused on wellness. It's not just Dr. Sam's Chiropractic.
Oh, for sure.
Like, you're focused on so many aspects of it. And why?
Well, the body is so interconnected, and rarely is something just a simple chiropractic solution. Usually there's something that's a root cause that we've got to get to, whether it's posture, lifestyle, diet changes, emotional baggage, stuff that people are still holding on to.
Sit up straight.
Little correction.
Yeah.
But just helping people be aware of their body's talking to them, especially when we're talking about pain. Usually it starts as a whisper. A lot of us kind of ignore that until it becomes a scream, and that's when people bring in some support from someone like me.
That's when they go to the chiropractor, when they're like, oh, I'm hurting.
Yep. Yeah. And of course it can be preventative, but helping people identify, like, where is this pain actually coming from? What is your body actually trying to tell you? And sometimes it's more than pain. It can be digestive issues. It can be anxiety, things like that too, mental unwellness that we can work with in these ways to just help your body be more balanced.
And how do you kind of get to that point with someone? Is that just through conversation?
Conversation, observation. I used to do a lot more house calls so I could actually go into their setting and see, oh, this old lazy boy you're sitting in for 12 hours a night, you know, or how is this mattress? Yeah. Open the fridge, see what's in there. Maybe something's going on with your liver. I don't see any water in here. Those kind of observations. But even just the way people carry themselves, and especially over time, my goal with people is to get them to come in on a seasonal basis, you know, just for maintenance. As our environment changes, we want our body to be able to adapt to all of that. Of course, here in Missouri, we've got 4 seasons in every season. So
I think we're getting 2 today.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But at first, when people come in, when they're kind of at the intense pain point, usually it takes a few sessions in a row to get them back to that maintenance level. And so in that time, we just kind of keep peeling back the layers of what's really going on. And sometimes you'll touch a spot on someone and they'll tell you a story. It'll come through really clearly about what's up for them, what's alive in their body in that spot, or where it came from.
That's really cool. It's very interesting how that kind of interweaves with martial arts too. Like we just had a call the other day and our coach was talking about no one ever has walked in to be like, you know, my front snap kick.
Sure.
I really think you could help me out with that. It's normally, you know, I'm struggling with weight, or I'm struggling with health, or I'm struggling with, and it's creating an environment where you can get those conversations.
Exactly.
So many times for us, you know, I'll have a student, I'd say green belt is where they've been there about a year. All of a sudden now a story will come out from the parents on why they came in, like that pain point that brought them in.
Yes.
So that's what's really neat with you, with me. I got a whole class full of people, 60, 70 people in the room. Like that's a very hard conversation to have. That's why we do the meetings. Like you came in with Linux, we talk, how's things going?
Yep.
With what you do, that bedside manner is probably huge, and your ability to just talk to people and be comfortable with them and ask those questions has got to help you a lot.
Yes. Well, the model that I've created at Rooted Alignment is that it's one person or one family in that building with me at a time. So there's not a waiting room full of people. There's not pressure. There's privacy. And the appointments are 30 to 45 minutes, especially for the first one. So we can really dive into stuff in that, comfort together. So that's helpful with the one-on-one. And oftentimes, especially when I have a couple there, typically the man will be like, yeah, this is kind of hurting. And then the wife will be like, well, don't forget to tell her.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to have that piggyback in the conversation of the partner's perspective on them and what's really going on there too.
Well, and you're going to learn a lot more that way too, because you're now getting their eyes on it.
Exactly.
And
with kids too, of course. I do a lot of work with pediatrics, and that's huge because they've got the story, but the parents also have their version of it. And kind of sorting through what's yours, what's mine, what's ours when it comes to that stuff can be important. And a lot of it is not just about pain, it's about function. So that can be a better measure often, because sometimes the healing process is painful.
Well, and you say it could be not just about pain, but function. Break that down for us a little more.
Sure. So, everything from the way we move and function in that sort of way, the way we hold ourselves, but to also the way that we have our human experience, right? The way that we go through our day, the way our mind works and connects with our body, we want that to be as optimized as possible. And our body's intelligent. It wants that too. And so we have to give it the right signals and impulses to be able to keep us moving and grooving, because we're hydroelectric beings.
Yeah.
So really from that perspective, being able to optimize the human experience for people, whatever they're doing, whatever their activities of daily living, whatever brings them joy, wanting them to be able to do that without restriction.
Yeah. Well, and discussing with them too the importance of, like you said, everything's connected. So if you're having an issue here, then let's go back a couple spots and see what could we do back here that's maybe going to help that?
Yes.
I don't think people always look at it that way. I think in our modern society, it's no, I have a problem here.
Oh, yeah.
I never understood this a lot until when I first opened the martial arts school, and I sat at a desk all the time. I was always active. Every job I ever had was physical. I never had any back problems. I never had any weight issues. You can ask my wife, I lived on Mountain Dew, McDonald's, Burger King, Tender Crisp from Burger King, double quarter pounders from McDonald's.
We all have our vices.
Yeah, I had all that. That's all I lived on, but I never gained any weight. I wasn't unhealthy from outside looking in. Good Lord, now I think about it, I'm like, how did I not die?
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, you look back on it, but when I started running the school, I was on a desk. I was learning to use a computer for the first time. My first social media post was a picture of me at my desk. That was the first time I got on those things. Then my back hurt and I gained weight and I felt like crap and I had terrible focus and I would get sick.
Yeah.
Never had that when I was super active. So
I always say motion's
lifestyle.
medicine, you know, and so keeping yourself active and not just in repetitive ways, in balanced ways. And so I can tell when I'm doing my first exam and palpating someone's spine, it's pretty obvious to me what their dominant hand is. It's pretty, and I always start with an exam, and I like to do exams throughout their care plan as well, just to make sure we are making objective changes with their range of motion, balancing things. I always have people stand on 2 scales to see you carry yourself heavier on the right. Are you left-handed?
Oh, it's funny. I saw that this morning at the office. I didn't even think to ask why. I remember I saw the 2 scales sitting there.
I know. I'm always I don't care what they add up to. I just want to see what the difference is, because I want to make that difference smaller so that we're standing a little more evenly. Of course, perfect posture, if you stand in perfect posture, you would break out in sweat, because it is activating all of those muscles, really being aware, and it takes conscious effort to do that. And so giving people little cues of hey, this is your pattern. So now that you know you carry yourself on the right, and you always cross your left leg over, maybe when you catch yourself doing that, switch legs. Little things like that to just kind of start integrating, because the best exercise or the best change is when you'll actually do, when you'll actually make.
Yeah, you can't be you guys all need to go to CrossFit.
Exactly.
No, and that makes sense, and that's something I've noticed from martial arts too. I was working with someone last night, and we were setting up a kick, lead leg kick. She was asking something about balance and turning and where her hip was, and I noticed that she carries herself with her hips kind of rolled under.
Oh, yeah.
And so when she's going to kick, whereas most of us will lean forward a little bit, she was actually her hips and rear were pulled almost under her torso.
Yep.
And I was like, that's going to make doing that kick really hard because the way she's
that
carrying
pelvic
it.
tilt, of
yes,
course.
but the way she tilt, which during a kata, you want your hip, that pelvic tilt under. But when the way she was doing her kick, like it was literally her shoulders, there was nothing really under her to support. And I was like, never come across that before. Put a pin in this. I'll come back to it. I'm going to watch her a little more in class because she was asking some questions. And the way she was standing wasn't exactly the way I wanted, but it was working for her.
Sure.
But there's a deeper underlying thing there now that I know that we're going to have to make some tweaks. She's
and the goal
adult,
is to have control over it. But she probably wasn't even aware of her posture.
She wasn't, and I was exhausted last night, so I didn't go into
Sure.
it. It was the last class the last night, so it was over 700 kids yesterday between the elementary school I went to, and my brain width was done.
But you did that functional assessment. Now you've got this, like you said, the pin in it. You put it in your parking lot for later, and you can, over time, help her make little corrections.
Just little things, and that's why I explain to people sometimes. I was watching a class one night, and the black belts were like, what? I'm like, I'm just watching everybody's feet and knees.
Yeah.
Why? I'm like, because you guys all are moving them differently, and I'm trying to assess in my head if what you're doing is going to hurt you in competition or if it's okay, or if you're babying something. Because like you just said with the two scales, like I find people carry to one side or the other, so some things are a little harder.
Oh, yeah.
Than they would be for me or for someone else. And it's different with the kids, but it's as they get older. Little kids are just kind of anything. Yeah. There's no, you don't see that type of stuff with the adults. So that's really interesting. I never thought about that, of having them stand on the two scales to see where they're carrying it.
Oh, yeah.
I bet it's off.
Well, and if you notice,
I bet if I stood, because I dropped that one shoulder, I bet if I stood,
Well, and that's why I have them right in front of that mirror, too. So I can pull it out and we can look, where are your ears? Are they even? Because oftentimes you're holding yourself differently, you know? What about your shoulders? Because your brain wants the space between your ear and your shoulder to be the same for balance purposes. So if you're holding yourself like this, well, then this is going to happen to create balance. And over time, that becomes the way you hold yourself. So, starting there, doing like the space, having their hands next to them and seeing how much space is right in that junction between the ribs and the low back, seeing how their hips are, where their knees are, and then from the side, every inch forward that your chin is over this, or your ear is over that shoulder, is an extra 10 pounds right at that junction of the neck and the back. So I often call it the lovely lady lump, because you see it a lot, and especially women that spend a lot of time looking down doing handiworks and stuff, they'll get that dowager's hump there, and the way to prevent that is bringing those shoulders down and back and keeping the ear over the shoulder. And it's, head, shoulders, knees, and toes, just checking from the side, getting people in alignment and having them feel this is what alignment feels like.
Yeah. So well, being mindful of your body too. And I may explain that on our comp team a little bit. We've been doing the form, and they're like, well, you had me do this. I'm like, well, you're going to do that. And luckily, everybody's very understanding, because, I'll use Emily as an example. I was like, your build type, you're not going to do things like this. I was like, sure. And I always let everybody know, I'm not shaming anyone.
Correct.
But like, Jocelyn is going to be built more like you are. Her coach, Caitlin, built like you are.
Yep.
The way Jocelyn and Caitlin and you would do something is not the way Lennox is going to do something.
Absolutely.
Or the way, Caleb and Lennox line up by each other all the time. And the two of them they carry themselves similar, but yet differently. So they're going to execute differently.
Absolutely.
So understanding that as a teacher is huge. So with what you do, understanding that, and then also figuring out like, oh, you a big gamer? What do you do for a living? What are the outlying circumstances here that are going to help us fix this? Because it's not just hey, I need you to come 3 times a week while I crack you.
Correct.
We've got to, for a true solution, it's got to be a team.
And we have to have an objective measure of that. Like, are your kicks getting higher? Can we see these changes, I
just told the class that last night. I'm like, how many kicks did you guys do today? Is it 6? Is it 7? I was like, I'm not trying to shame anyone, but I'm trying to teach the kids to have a measuring point.
Yeah.
And I told them, we're doing the same thing for 3 months. We're touching on it in different ways. Remember, hey, week 4, Master Matt said I did 7 kicks.
Yes.
Now on week 16, when we come back to this, was it still 7 or did you do 9? Because any improvement is going to be good.
Or was I able to do those 7 with intention?
And that's what we were saying.
And have good form, you know?
Exactly. And everybody, like I told them, I can't say I need everyone to do 25 because not all of you can do that.
Correct.
I was like, but maybe one of you that wobbled a whole bunch was actually able to stand still this time.
Yes.
Whereas one of you that could do 25, well, maybe you did 40, but they were really high. You know, and then trying to be mindful of, like, if I do notice an improvement in class, telling them. It would be the same thing, like with what you're doing, you're looking at it from a whole perspective. Now, being said, that's one thing we've talked about since you did your logo and all this. And I've been blessed to be part, like, to be able to talk to you through this journey. It's so
you've seen the whole evolution.
Yeah, like,
which honestly, even, I mean, when we met, I was in school and I started jujitsu, which is all about finding the end range of joints.
Yes.
And so, well, and of course choking and all that fun stuff too.
But
it was so neat to be like in school talking about take them to the end range and go a little past it. And then you at night go to jujitsu, take them to the end range and make them tap.
Yeah,
like,
just exactly.
But really learning the dynamics and the limitations of every joint. Also learning what hypermobility feels like in people on the mats versus on the table, and being able to translate that has been huge for my career.
Oh, I bet.
Yes.
I bet. And well, and the understanding of the human body with what you do, it translates. Same thing. I've always said I wanted to go back to school, get exercise science and kinesiology.
Oh yeah,
because of what I do.
You could be teaching the classes at this point.
It just understanding it, but I still would love to do that just to understand the science side.
Oh yeah.
You know, like Dr. Shiloh came in to talk about neurodivergency, and I told the class, a lot of the stuff she's going to say is stuff we already do, but she's going to explain it to you from an educated standpoint. I'm just telling you, I know this works with this certain child. And it was funny as she would touch on things, Emily would look. And she'd touch on something else, Emily's like, oh. And I'm like, see, I told you. She's going to explain it from a point that I can't because I don't have the education, but I have been teaching martial arts so long, I get it.
Yeah,
you know,
got that experience.
As you've went through this process though, and kind of went through and found your journey, like explain the name and your logo and why that means so much to you. Because I think it just, when you showed it to me and you said what you're gonna do, it was like, yes, that is you. That is perfect. I remember you telling me that, and I'm like, that fits. That is so cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few different layers to the story, but I've kind of always held the name Rooted Alignment and Wellness in my mind. And I love the abbreviation, the RAW, like raw healing, raw well, you know.
I didn't think about that. Yeah, another level to it.
And it was actually one of my good friends, Rachel, that helped me come up with that. She was deep in the struggles of addiction, and we would always kind of soundboard off each other. She knew I was a safe space and I wouldn't judge her, and she'd call and say, I need to compost. And like meant that she'd gone through some stuff that was not the most lovely and needed to help alchemize that in a way that could help her move through it. And we'd always talk about the compost helps us root so we can align. She passed away in 2019, and I felt pretty like devastated by that. Honestly, part of it was because she was a trust fund baby, and I thought she was going to fund Rooted Alignment and Wellness.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
But after her passing, it kind of shook me and made me be like, is this really still my mission? Is this still my goal? How can I bring this forward? And the more that I sat with it and the more that I had experiences in other settings, the more obvious it became that this is emerging. It's kind of its own thing. And then what happened is once I was able to get into my own space and kind of leave the scope of insurance, where I was very, very limited by those insurance companies, and now I'm able to, in that 30 to 45 minutes with people, we get to do whatever the body needs, not just what their insurance plan says that they can have, which is amazing. And oftentimes, like we've talked about, the body keeps the score, you know, and I'll get into someone's system and find like, this is a little more than biomechanical. There's something in here that's emotional or energetic. And my son, after his friend Jarrett passed away 2 years ago, I had him working with a play therapist, and she was amazing. And the results we had with her were incredible. She would bring me in. And so once I had my own space, I said, hey, Kaylee, I got space for you too. And so we do these things called rooted resets. She has her own work that she does as well, these intuitive insights where people can come in for an hour and a half with her and work through that stuff in all different ways. She has a whole toolbox that she uses.
That's awesome.
Yes, but we have had so much amazing results with these rooted resets where people come in, they'll start with an adjustment with me to kind of prime the nervous system, get everything ready, because people think adjustments are moving bones like Legos out of place or something, but it really is making space for those nerves.
Yeah, it's so much to the nervous system.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that impacts the organs, extremities, all that kind of stuff. But once we open that all up and get them aligned in that way, they'll go back and do stuff with Kaylee. Usually it's some expressive arts work, bilateral brain activation is huge, some energy work, and then we'll bring me back in for acupuncture and sound healing, which at first I thought was kind of woo until I experienced it and was like, once again, we're hydroelectric beings, and you see how water responds to sound and vibrations, and you can feel it, especially with acupuncture needles, and they're like little antenna.
I've always thought acupuncture was the coolest thing.
Oh, it's one of my favorites. I love it.
And then once I got it done on me, you've done it before, it's like, it just is.
Right.
And I can't explain it, but I'm just saying it works. It's amazing. And I love it.
The research shows for 80% of people, it's profoundly positive. My statistics are a lot higher out here because people are usually pretty desperate by the time they try it.
Yes.
Or pretty attuned to their system, so they notice the subtle shifts. Because what we're doing is getting the body out of fight or flight and into rest and digest, poop and recoup mode. So they'll feel those changes right away. I tell them, if you're doing this for pain, you might not notice the physical change right away, but you will notice some restfulness or digestive changes, letting some stuff go physically. And often, depending on what meridians we've needled, I'll tell them, like, look in the toilet after your next contribution and see if there's some green from the gallbladder being stimulated or some gray from the liver releasing that bile into the system. And that's usually when people are like, okay, that was weird, but worked.
Yes.
And I will say there's two different types of needling that I do. The acupuncture is grounded in traditional Chinese medicine. That is ancient practice. And I really honestly think that the best way to describe how that works is creating like a controlled micro trauma in an area, especially when you have chronic pain or stuff that is a little more like psychosomatic kind of stuff. It's like telling the body, hey, I know you've gotten used to this and you've accepted it as your normal, but we're going to go in and like biohack the system. This area needs attention. This energetic system needs movement or some sedation, you know? And it's amazing to see what happens because you'll throw the needles and some of them will get pulled in, some will get pushed out. Some of them, the body will react like a hive around it.
What was it? Casey's one was doing something because I heard her telling me that night because she was so like, she's not, you know, I've had that stuff. I would actually was going to try to go to school when I opened the dojo for massage therapy, and I wanted to be able to do different things like that.
Oh, yeah.
But it just never worked out in the schedule.
Sure.
So I've looked into it a lot more. But she's like, the one went, it was doing that. I'm like, yeah, that's what they're supposed to. She was like, oh, it was just wild. And
what's really wild is once we get like the sound bowls out, you would expect the needle closest to it to move, but that's not always the case. Sometimes it's the one on the top of the head when I'm doing the bowl down by the feet. And it's just kind of a neat way for me to see what systems are open in them, how things are moving. So that's the traditional acupuncture. But we also do dry needling. So if there's a really stubborn trigger point or not, or just a pain point, we can go in and go around it or right into it. Once again, signaling to the body, hey, we need a cytokine cascade here. We need some support and attention. Because all of what I'm doing is like, I'm not the healer. Your body's the healer. Your higher power is the healer, wherever you stand with that. But it's all about creating space for that healing to happen. And giving it the right impulses and signals, especially when something's gotten chronic. And you're like, no, we need some attention here.
Well, something you said that I think a lot of people don't realize, and it's funny because it translates to the martial arts as well, is your body will come up with ways to accept or compensate for things. Where you'll be like, no, I'm fine. It's like, no, this is actually really off. Well, I've been fine for years. I had a conversation with a guy one time. He's like, well, this just feels weird to do it this way. And we broke it down. We're like, that's because you've been doing it wrong for 20 years. It's not that the new way is that different. It's not that the new way is wrong because it feels different. You've been doing it wrong. Now you're doing it right. And I tell students that all the time. Hey, you go to do something. It's like, wow, this feels really, I explain it to a black belt. So part of their training is they'll notice, I need to do this.
Those little subtle shifts that change it.
Because they'll realize that they're doing it incorrectly. You'll feel it. And I try to explain that's kind of, there's like a level 3 to 5 years of training that you notice a lot of things by feel. Sure. But that makes sense with you. Like you'll probably have people come in, clients are like, no, I'm good. You'll be like, no, something's wrong. Well, no, it doesn't bother me. Well, you've been compensating for it or adjusting for it.
Or my left hip hurts, but I can find the real problem is in the right sacrum or the right, and it's the left's hurting because it's compensating. And one of the things I say all the time is the body wants what's familiar, not what's good for it.
Yes.
So once we've gotten stuck in a pattern, like your muscles will try to pull you back to what your normal posture was, which is why at the end of adjustments, I like to end with some soft tissue work, whether it's electric stimulation, cupping, Graston scraping, or some kind of combo of that, even some manual myofascial release, just to really give space for the body to be like, hey, honestly, confuse it. This is your new normal. This is what we're trying to do.
Makes sense.
Because I want those adjustments to hold. I don't want to have to see people every single day for 2 weeks. Then I just feel like we're pouring a bottle of water on a house fire. I want to really evolve with their care plan.
And the way you're getting into this with people and the way you're talking and working them through it too, I would think you're helping educate them a little bit. And, a lot of times it's, I need you to come back, because you're fighting the fact that, okay, we're going to correct this. They're going to wake up tomorrow morning. They're going to have their coffee, their rock star, their gas station burrito. And I'm only saying this because that was my habits.
Sure.
And they're going to go to work. They're going to lift the same things, or they're going to sit the same way.
Oh, yeah.
And they're going to come back in 2 days, and I'm going to have to put it right back in the same spot because there's not that external, I'm good, I'm going to go to the chiropractor Thursday.
Right.
That external changes are being made. That to where, how would I say that? Nothing in their system is changing, but they're somehow expecting a different result because you adjusted them.
Well,
so it's going to just go back.
Yeah.
It's just going to go back because there's not that external change. So by having these conversations and by caring, there is going to be that external change. Maybe they are going to get up the next morning and be like, all right, I'm going to have a glass of water.
Yeah.
I constantly overwhelm myself with content from outside because of that. Because my coach Aaron always says, it's not that I'm teaching you new today. I'm reminding you of something you already know. Yes, I'll see something about, with Andrew Hepperman, it'll be like, hey, get up, drink water first thing in the morning and get sunlight.
Yeah.
And I'll get in a habit. Like the other day, I realized I hadn't had my ice bath on in 5 weeks. It was the first time in 3 years I've ever went this long without it.
Wow.
I got it all hooked up the other day because I was talking to Casey. I'm like, I'm stressed. I was getting super short with people. And she's like, guess what you haven't done? You haven't gotten in your freaking ice bath. So you're nicer when you ice bath. Because for me, it's more of a nervous system thing.
Oh, for sure.
It's more of a nervous system. It does help with sore muscles, but the nervous system reset for me is what got me into doing it in the first place. And it was even before people were talking about it that way.
Oh, I remember.
I was just like, I just feel better. People would be like, well, yeah, your muscles aren't as sore. I'm like, no, I just feel better as a human.
Yeah.
So I keep doing it. I don't know why. And then is like 6 months later or 7 months, something like that, Andy Frischella was like, I finally did an ice bath. And holy shit.
Yeah.
And then from there, it's like a regular thing for me. But I feel like we fall back into those cycles. But
you've got the tools. You just have to remember to use them.
Yes.
And sometimes you don't know what you got till it's gone, including pain, anxiety, that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Or it comes back, you're like, yeah, what's different? And it takes an external person to be like, I've observed that you have stopped doing this thing that was working.
Yes. Well, but like you're saying, you're creating that relationship with the client. And that relationship with those other people, that you're bringing things in that can help them.
Right.
Maybe they're having a back issue and a hip issue and a this issue and a that issue because of some trauma.
Oh, absolutely.
Emotional trauma
absolutely.
That they haven't resolved. Well, now you've got what's her name? Kaylee Moore.
Yes.
Right? Yes. I pronounce it wrong until you just said it. I could pronounce her name Callie. I was uh-oh. I just connected her with Brad Geeting the other day. She messaged me. I love her.
She's wonderful.
And
it's great to have another objective eyes on something too. And when we collaborate, it's amazing. Yeah, I love that. And when I'm giving people tools, I don't even call it homework. No one wants to do homework, but everyone wants to play with their new tool. And like I said, the best exercise, the best stretch is when you'll actually do.
Yeah.
So part of those conversations is figuring out what is going to work with their lifestyle. Is this something I should tell them to integrate every day, morning and night? If that's not realistic, it's not going to happen. So we've got to see like, okay, I see you've got these long lunch breaks. How about you try this stretch? Let me know how it feels. Sometimes people will even send me videos of them doing it, and I'll make like little digital corrections for them. Like, no, take your head more to this side before you
That's
drop
awesome.
it down, and really helping them find that relief on their own and empowering people to know when it's time to come back and see me, when it's time to come in and see Kaylee. We're going to bring a massage therapist in June as well, and she's got a lot of the same philosophies that we do, so she fits in really well, and I'm excited to see what she brings into the collaborative setting as well.
That's really, really cool. And it's so neat to see this from the outside, because as an entrepreneur, I love being an entrepreneur. I look back on it, and that's one thing. My dad worked at the same job for 48 years. He made a good living. We had a good family life. Mm-hmm. But he always told me, just work for yourself. And after working for myself, there's been so many times that I'm like, man, it would be nice to just get a paycheck every week. But I don't think I could ever let go of that rebel mentality of just doing it.
Yeah.
And you can
and
dive
being able
in.
to bring in the new stuff too. So like we've talked a lot about, working with adults and these collaboratives with Kaylee, but another aspect, I mean, I told you I brought her in because she was working with my son. So this kind of all started from a pediatric perspective, because I went to this brain-based analysis and adjusting workshop that blew my mind. Where
How long ago?
This was right when I first opened. So it was probably back in December.
Wow.
And Dr. Rubin was the one who led it, and he works with a lot of nonverbal autistic kids and was talking about some of the incredible breakthroughs he's had with his very gentle style of adjusting. I would almost call it attunement instead of an adjustment, because there's not usually like that can be really startling for kids to hear that release, and we walk that line between treatment and trauma once the body freaks out about something. So what he does instead, that I have had amazing success with, is instead of going to the area that's quote out of place and like submitting it into place, you go right above it and below it and give positive reinforcement to the areas that are where they should be, and let that middle one kind of fall into place. And it takes longer. It takes 2 to 3 minutes of holding those spots. But in that time, you're building rapport with that kid. You can ask them what they're into. There's just, and they can feel your touch as a safe thing. There's just something really powerful about that. So I started doing that, and I started integrating primitive reflexes for people and testing on adults and kids, especially people with neurodivergence.
What do you mean by primitive reflexes?
So this is something I think we'll hear more and more about over the next 10 years, especially in functional neurology. But it's essentially, we are born with these reflexes that help us survive and help us get from the womb up to the mom's breast, things like that. And because the way the birth process is, because the traumatic way that people live in general, these can be retained or they can return. And what happens is when these primitive reflexes are retained or returned, your brain kind of gets stuck in a fight or flight situation. You're more in that sympathetic nervous system, but also your upper and lower extremities aren't communicating as efficiently as they could be, and your left and right aren't communicating as efficiently as they could be. So we do these really simple functional tests to see what's going on here and which ones we can address. And once we can get them to reintegrate, which I do over, really, it only takes a week or two of working with a kid every single day, or at least 3 times a week. And we kind of follow their lead. You can tell when their brain's getting tired, when their body's getting tired. Take a little break, try to come back. But the results have been incredible, especially with things like toe walking, bedwetting, focus issues, handwriting, things like that. A lot of times that comes from retained palmar reflex.
And is that for anybody or more for your neurodivergence? Or
I see it a lot more in the neurodivergent population, but there's a lot of times when I'm just palpating someone's spine and I can tell they have a retained spinal galant reflex just based on how ticklish they are in certain areas. So I'll be like, what's going on here? Were you a toe walker as a kid? Or have you had issues with encopresis or things like this? You can kind of start to build the story of what's really going on. And it doesn't take long, especially in kids. In adults, it takes a little bit longer and a little bit more persistence.
Kids are more open to that stuff. Like once you start talking about it, they're going to follow their body more.
Yes. And of course,
Adults
I make it as fun as possible.
Notion.
Correct.
I got to do this, or this felt better when I did that.
Exactly.
Makes a lot of sense, though. That's really interesting, because I've always explained that with some of our kicks. It's not that you can't do the kick, it's your body protecting you. Your body doesn't want you to go vertical.
Yeah.
Your body doesn't want you to take this leg and put it over this one, over this leg, like on a 540 kick, because now there's no way, you have to catch yourself in your leg. So once you break that safety response, that automatic stomp your foot down so you don't fall, then you can go higher with it. And as someone gets older, that is even harder for them to
when you were trying to teach me the butterfly kicks, I could logically understand.
Yes.
I could physically, understand. Geometrically even, I could see it. But when I would go to do it, my nervous system was like, nope.
Yep, your body's protecting you.
But it takes that patterning and that practice and just those steps of like, oh no, it is safe to have my head under my foot. It is safe.
And that's what I explained to everybody. I'm like, some of this stuff we have to start little with it and then bigger. I was like, my instructor didn't do it that way with me years ago. I said, I want to learn this kick, and he just do it again. Until I pulled muscles, I was hurting, and all it was my body saying, hey, we don't want your foot higher than your head. That's whoops, that's opposite for us. We're gonna make you react.
Yeah, sure.
So that makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't have thought of it the way you phrased it. I was like, well, that makes a lot of sense in how that applies, but that would be the same way with people.
The other piece of that, though, is the way that, I mean, you had me do those butterfly kicks on the mats. There's mats for a reason. So it's like, what's the worst that's going to happen, Sam? You're going to fall on your butt? Okay.
Yeah.
You know how to break fall? You know?
Exactly.
Just like, oh, okay.
But it's the, like you said, it's the act of doing it over and over again that then creates the confidence for your body to go, okay, let's go a little further because we're safe. And the next thing you know, you're landing the kick. And like I told him, once I did it 2 or 3 times when I was trying to get the kick down, then my body went, oh, okay.
Yeah.
We're okay.
Once
and
you
now
feel
I
it,
can do it. Yeah.
Yep.
Now I can do it. And I always explain that to him. So that makes a lot of sense where it would come with that. Like, hey, this is a natural reaction your body's having. We're going to have to work on this.
Yeah.
And I could see that too with neurodivergency. You know, people are going to be ticklish or not want to be touched. Or like you said, if you just grab someone and pop, scare the living daylights out of them. That makes a lot of sense. Huh. Yeah. That's really interesting.
And that's why each appointment does kind of look a little different, because we're kind of evolving. We're adjusting different areas. We're sometimes using different techniques with it. Sometimes we'll use an instrument to do it. Most of the time I use my hands. Sometimes it is that more gentle attunement style, and it's based on what people need at that time. Or if they show up on the verge of sickness, I take a totally different approach and use Logan Basic to really get their nervous system on board, knowing that the nerves that control that fight or flight reflex are all in the middle of our back, but the ones that get us into rest and digest are up in the neck and down in the sacrum. So if someone's really like fired up, I kind of ignore that middle part unless there's something really obvious going on, because I don't want to give those nerves and those nerve roots attention. I want to really focus on, sedating that, getting the other part of the nervous system on board. And then, of course, you know, we do the endonasal technique too. So that's also, I mean, it's a pretty invasive physical adjustment.
Explain the endonasal technique. Go ahead.
Do you want to explain it? You experienced it.
You explain it. No, you can't. So, I still tell people, I'm like, Sam's had her fingers up my nose.
Yep. I know. I remember being in the back seat of my mom's car and her being like, don't dig for gold. I was probably like 8. I'm like, she had no idea. I know. I'm like, I was training. But yeah, awesome. a lot of what people experience, especially here in Missouri, are seasonal allergies. But also, I have a lot of people complaining about snoring, sleep apnea. I didn't realize I needed this until you gave me the mouth tape, and I started feeling claustrophobic. Like, why can't I breathe through my nose at night? What's going on here? And then I went to Dr. Facella's training on endonasal technique, and he's flown out and done this technique on the UFC fighters after major trauma, because it's the best way you can open up those sinuses. We have 3 sinuses in our face here, the main ones here that drain back into the oropharynx. So you go up with a small little balloon and just make space. I've done this on kids as young as 4 years old.
Yeah, anytime I've told people you did this to me, they freak. They have this like freaked out look. I'm like, it's not bad. I think the problem is there's so many dumb reels of the balloon
coming
in the
through
mouth,
the mouth,
that freak everyone out. Because I've had people who are like, well, didn't you choke on the balloon? I'm like,
no, because you didn't talk. And I tell people, just breathe through your mouth. If you need me to stop, I'll always respect the tap, just like jujitsu. But really just using that balloon to not just open the sinuses and move them, but to, like, this is going to sound so gross, but juice any old mucus and mucosa that's up in there, pushing those muscles up against the bone in there so that old stagnant stuff can finally drain, because it gets sticky and gross. And you'll hear it, especially when we get up into that second one. And it's almost like a squelching sound, or your ears will pop. And this technique used to be used before antibiotics for all ear, nose, and throat stuff, because you start with the balloon, and then, of course, I go up and feel the septum, see if we need to change anything using the zygomatic process of the cheek. And then the final part is obviously going in to the oropharynx behind that gag reflex and sweeping anything that's gone down that way to really have the most effective results from it. And it's one of the most, like I said, it's on the most invasive side of things I do, besides probably an internal tailbone adjustment. But it's, which has its place as well. But But it's an immediate change,
well,
especially the one side, and you're like, oh, now the other side needs it.
Well, and the wild thing for me too is someone that I've always had sinus issues. I've always struggled with it. Antibiotics my whole life, tumor in my ear, loss of hearing, drainage. I still, tons of drainage from my ears. It doesn't take much for me to get anything. Sinuses, when you did that, the relief from it was great. The sweep was great. Like that actually felt therapeutic when they hit that spot, because that's the spot where everything hangs up.
Yeah, and those tonsils and adenoids, I can feel the change over sessions, because I usually do that in a series of 3. We'll go into that first sinus, and the next time we'll go into the first and second, and then the last one will finally go up into all 3, including that frontal. And because it's just progressively a little more invasive each time, and it's kind of neat to be able to feel the changes in the oropharynx go from really bumpy and gravelly to nice and smooth, and checking their palate in there and seeing like, okay, yeah, things are definitely moving in the right direction for you.
No, and that was huge. And that's something too that I love what you did is it's not Sam's Chiropractic, it's rooted alignment wellness, because you're focusing on all of it. And I really think people sometimes hone in on it's got to be A, B, C, or D, and it's not.
It's rarely a textbook situation like that.
No, but it could be maybe something you're eating is causing inflammation, or, I need to run. Maybe you're not a runner. Maybe running's not good for you. Maybe your body's not set up for that, or,
or if you need to, what shoes do you need to be wearing? What surface do you need to be on? If that really is your passion, I want you to be able to do it. So let me help you find a way that works for you, where your body's not screaming at you for days afterwards, right?
I've always tried to tell people that too, which is getting in better shape in general. Find something you love to do.
Yeah.
Don't go run because your neighbor runs. Try running. If you hate running, I hate running. I only run for fight camps.
Yeah.
Cool. That's why I'm not a runner. That's not my hobby. But maybe it is your thing. Casey gets a huge dopamine hit from running. I'm always encouraging her to run because she likes it.
Yeah.
Find what you like. I've got friends that are super into CrossFit, friends that are super into yoga. Just find something you like and get moving. And that's what's nice with the wellness. Well, but with the wellness is you're focusing on everything. You're having those conversations to address those issues for people, not just... cool, I'll see you in room 2. Let's pop and crack you.
Right.
Why are you having this issue? I don't know. Okay, let's talk about it. Then you find out that, maybe they did a demolition derby 5 years ago. And they're like, no, I was fine from that. And it's like, well, you probably were, but now this stuff's happened.
Well, and oftentimes, and I'll see this with car accidents. You'll feel fine in the moment because you've got an adrenaline rush, and your body doesn't feel safe to let you feel the fullness of that experience. So as you cultivate safety and balance in your life, then you might start to have these new pains that are coming up that are actually related to old injuries, because now you've created an environment where your body's ready to let go of that.
Yes.
And one of my mentors, Dr. Megan Malone out in O'Fallon, Stu's wife.
Yeah, I was going to say, wait, I just heard that name yesterday.
Yeah, she's amazing. She's one of my greatest mentors, and she always reminds me of one of the pillars in chiropractic philosophy is that those subluxations or those misalignments can come from, she calls it the 3 T's: thoughts, trauma, and toxins. So getting back to what is creating this misalignment for you? Because sometimes it is a thought. It is this self-limiting belief. It could just be in stress.
Yes. Or like you said, yes, a self-belief that, oh no, this is just how I am.
Yes.
Or maybe, well, my dad always had this issue, so do I, or my mom, whatever.
Correct.
I could see that.
Well, and a lot of times with the genetic piece, it's interesting because it's like, well, is this genetic, or do you have family recipes that have been passed down that use a bunch of lard? And that's really what's going on here. Or, things like that where we can kind of start to peel back the layers of course, there's genetic predispositions, but how can we biohack through that to get you to the most optimized way of being?
Yeah. Well, and I've noticed that about myself too. Like, I'll get back pain, and Casey will ask, oh, what did you lift some today? I'll be like, no, I didn't drink enough water.
Yes.
Because that's the first 2 signs for me of not enough water is lips chapped and then my back gets sore.
Yep.
And I literally just walk right in, start just drinking water repeatedly, because as soon as that happens, I can go, I didn't have my jug with me, because if I don't carry it with me, I don't drink the water.
Yeah.
I just don't do it. I'll drink like a bottle while I'm at the school. That's not enough.
But you've learned over time what your tell is. That's your a metaphorical Achilles heel. And everyone's kind of got that. Sometimes it's an old injury.
Yes.
Sometimes, and the cause of it too. So a lot of what I do is helping people identify, okay, this is how things start to show up. Especially when people were born a little prematurely. Usually their type 2 alveolar cells didn't fully form, so they end up with asthmatic symptoms. So when they get sick, it's going to manifest in some sort of respiratory kind of way, which is where acupuncture can really come into play.
Makes sense.
Help change things up for them. But helping them identify it while the body's whispering before it starts screaming at them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and having those conversations has got to be important. That's one of the things, like I said, with us doing the black belt meetings at the school, that has been huge for me because, you know, I talked with Stacy when we first did the first set, and I was like, I really like this. Even parents that came in that had been there for a while that were like, why? And after we had done, they're like, this is really cool. I liked this. I'm like, me too. So then the second set we did, I did like 2 people at a time. Mm-hmm. Nope, not going to do that. People were talking over each other. It was not what I wanted.
Right.
Like as soon as we did our first group, they left. I looked down the desk, Stacy. I'm like, no, we're not doing this. She's like, yeah, that was terrible.
Sure.
But it's also hard to schedule. So we're working on tweaking it a little bit, but I liked it. And I was like, man, I wonder how I could do this at the beginning. And it struck me, I'm not going to get the conversation at the beginning that I'm going to get after 2 months of them training. Because, like, how does Aaron phrase it? Nobody cares what you know until they know how much you care.
Yes.
So in the beginning, when they're first coming into school, I'm not going to get that. But after 2-3 months, when we sit down and have that black belt meeting, now I'm finding out, oh, this is why we came in. Oh, you're finding out the pain point, or you're finding out the story behind it, even if you wouldn't call it a pain point.
Sure.
Not going to get that on the first meet. I've had some people come in that was like, actually, I was really close to so-and-so, you know them. And I'm like, oh, yeah, we've crossed paths 20 times. I'm the type of person who would have walked in and said that, meeting someone. Most people aren't.
Right.
And I have to remember that. I'm just different. But having those conversations is so important, because if you have a couple visits with someone, I would say maybe by the 3rd visit, after they're like, wow, this is really cool. Even if they come in, they're like, okay, you got me standing on 2 scales. You're doing this. It's a little odd. By the 3rd one, they're like, wow, she really does care how I feel. All of a sudden, now the story gets different.
Yeah.
Now it opens up. So it shows how important those are. Like,
oh, yeah.
Once a student goes from that trial into the next program, I know them really well, and now I've maybe had that conversation with mom and dad about where the kids are coming from, or why on Tuesdays are we having so much troubles. Well, they stay with dad on Wednesdays, and there's anxiety there. Whatever the situation is, I'm getting that then.
Yes.
That I'm not getting at that first meeting.
Of course.
Because, like he says, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yep.
And they need that time for it, and that's huge. And that's what I think is so important with what you're doing. Is most people would have to have like, oh, after 15 years of practice, I realized X, Y, and Z. You're so open to this stuff that you're seeing it in the beginning, and you know where you're going.
Correct. I didn't graduate as a black belt, right?
Well, yes.
That was like, you know, okay, you graduated, now it begins.
Well, but you understand kind of your roadmap on where you want to go.
Yes.
And you're not open to it veering left, but you know that, okay, I don't want 10,000 clients where I got one booked every 7 minutes.
Yeah.
I want to be this size.
I jokingly say that like those high volume practices make me feel like a crack dealer. Like, bam, bam, thank you, ma'am. Next. And there was times in a high volume setting where I would make eye contact with someone and be like, have I worked with them before? And then as soon as they laid down on the table and I felt their spine, I was like, oh yeah, this guy. I'm like, no, I don't want that. I want to be able to look you in the eye and know your story, know we're building, know what our goals are together. And I do, circling back to what we said at the beginning, like I am a doctor. So there is doctor-patient confidentiality. Yes. And it does sometimes take a few sessions before people can trust that and realize that the space I'm holding is a very safe space. And oftentimes, especially when there's emotional stuff stored, and especially down in the hips and the sacrum, sometimes we'll do an adjustment and a story will come out. There's many types of release. Sometimes it's those pops. It's almost always those pops. But there's also yawning, farting, sneezing, coughing, telling a story.
Yeah. There's
so many different ways these things can come out. And sometimes it's a little involuntary and a story will come out and they're like, oh no, I didn't mean to tell you that, or I didn't mean to say it. And it's like, well, it's here now, and it's no one else heard it because it's just us here. And now that I know this, it can help me adjust our care plan a little bit to help you release that fully.
Well, and
integrate it.
The reason I say that too, that it's great that you figured that out now, is for me, I always wanted a big school. I wanted all these students, but I loved the under 100 size school and the way it felt. When you first came into the school, we'd done those self-defense workshops. I want to say right around that time is when I enrolled. It was like 90 90-something students, like 40-something days. It was astronomical. I could walk into the school any given night and not be able to tell you 80% of the people in the building's name.
Sure.
And that ate at me.
Right.
But then I would get online and all the gurus and all the things were like, no, you got to grow, you got to build, you got to do all this. And I was like, but I wasn't comfortable.
Sure.
So I let it drop back down. Then I was like, well, now I can't pay the bills. So finding that for me, it took me 15 years to figure out, okay, I want to know everyone in the school. I want to know their story. I want to be able to talk to them. I want to have these conversations, but I also want to build to a large size that affords me a lifestyle I want and to do the things that I do. And finding a coach to help me make that happen has been so freeing.
Yes.
That's what I think is so beautiful about the fact that you've really got a good grasp on all that in the beginning of your practice. So it's going to help you go so much further. Now, will you always have a small practice? Doesn't have to be. You might find 5 or 6 people like yourself. And you guys have this amazing office.
Yeah, I'm definitely
and
open
you're
to
open
that.
to that stuff. But if you were to stay just like it is now with what you've got, you would be completely content and happy with that because you're at a point, you know what you want.
Yes.
And that is amazing because I think so many people get into business because of what they see out of entrepreneurs and influencers, and they see a certain lifestyle from one side of a screen.
Right.
And then they get it and they're like, I don't want that. Like I thought I need to chase $1 million. I have to have $1 million business. It's got to make $1 million a year. I'm not going to be happy. And then once I did it, I was like, oh,
it's kind of an arbitrary thing.
It didn't feel any different. Like I went out, I did the dinner, I did the thing, I said the cheers, and it didn't actually mean anything. So then for me to realize what I really wanted and be able to apply it, it's such a different world.
Absolutely.
So it's beautiful to see you there in the beginning because no matter which way you go with things, it's not going to be a guessing process. You know the direction you want to follow.
Yeah, and I know my goal is nervous system regulation for our community. And even cycling back to my talk with pediatric work, oftentimes part of those intensives involve getting mom and dad in, or whoever the caregivers are, getting their nervous systems regulated, because it is dysregulating to have a neurodivergent child, especially depending on the amount of adaptations they need. It's a lot on the caregiver. And so those kids are sponges and mirrors, and being able to get the whole household regulated, like that is the objective goal there.
See, and I never would have thought of that when Shiloh came in to talk to leadership. She was going over, how'd she phrase it? But basically the parent getting ADHD because the kid has it, because the parent is doing so many things to help the child that she's like, you need to have patience with them too. Because there'd be nights as well, I'm like, how did they not get it? I get it if the 8-year-old didn't. How didn't they get it? Why didn't? And she was doing that, and I look Stacy, I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
Because I've always said that, any of your neurodivergent children, you can normally look at mom or dad and be like, it came from that one. Mm-hmm. They're very similar to that parent.
Sure.
Because it was funny because when Shiloh was working with everybody and was breaking down all the ADHD stuff, Ben was taking notes. He's like, do you grow out of this? She's like, no. He was like, Jocelyn was taking notes, and she was looking at me like, because she said 63% of all children that have a neurodivergent parent are going to end up neurodivergent. And Jocelyn was looking at Ben, looking at me, looking at her mom, looking at Ben, looking at me. And I looked at her, I'm like, it's not you. She's like, oh, I didn't think so. And Ben, but you could watch, Ben was like, crap, it's me.
I identify with this.
Yeah, like everything she was saying, it was cool because he's only in 6th grade. I was across the room watching him, and you could see him, I'm just like dad. Like you could see him connected outside. It was funny because when he raised his hand and asked, like Shiloh caught on too. She was like giggling a little bit because she would watch him and watch me and just chuckle.
Oh yeah,
because it's just 2 peas in a pod. But it was really funny to watch him realize he was ADHD because we regulate it with. He doesn't eat a lot of crap.
Correct.
I can't tell you anything in our house has red dye. Like
of course.
All the basic stuff you can do, we do. We exercise.
You're biohacking as a family.
To where until something happens in school where they're like, hey, this is becoming disruptive. He doesn't need medicine right now.
Sure. And I tell
take a
people
super
that.
low dose that if I wasn't having to do computer stuff,
sure,
I never needed it. Or when I was just painting houses, I was content. That stuff I enjoyed, brushing. I'm fine. I don't need the meds then.
Yep.
But with my
it's
job
about the
now,
function.
I do have to have it, but I keep it a low dose because I do the biohack that comes with it.
And you recognize, and especially with your ice baths, I mean, you recognize those differences and you recognize your tells of like, oh, okay, I'm really losing focus. I'm becoming a dopamine addict in a big way right now. How can
dopamine, that's a crazy one.
Right.
Well, we could do a whole podcast on that.
For sure. How can I get back to that? And oftentimes, especially in the adults, it's like sometimes they'll suspect they're neurodivergent, but they haven't gotten diagnosed. And you know, diagnosis can be really important, especially if you need some sort of adaptation. But the verbiage I sometimes use is, let's focus on a discovery more than a diagnosis. Yes. What does your system need? What is lacking? What's overstimulating right now? And how can we simplify things for you?
Well, and so many people right now, too, it's like OCD was. I used to get super irritated. People are like, well, because I get customers like, well, working on my colors, I'm just super OCD, and I'm looking around their house going, no, you're not. Right. You want to come see my house? That's the one that's OCD, legit. It's diagnosed. Trust me. I walk through the house. I'm like, that book's a little crooked. Yeah. Like they used to carry, one of the moms at school used to like take my business cards and do this. Oh, yeah. And they would turn them sideways, and then she would stop.
I would start twitching.
No, I'd walk through the office, and they would take my desk and they would bump it. And they would start her, she'd hit her stopwatch, and they'd watch me, and I'd walk into the office. I'd be like, yeah, everything's going good. And,
Yep. Just
and I wouldn't even break conversation. I'd walk back out, and I heard them one day go, 13. And I'm like, it hit me. I'm like, they're fucking with me. They're moving my stuff. Because I was like, who turned my, like in my brain, I'm like, who turned it? But in my brain, I'm also like, that's wrong. Let's fix it. Like,
sure.
Play detective later, but fix it. And, I would get upset because that hot term was OCD, and I'd get so mad at people. I'm like, you live like a pig. You're not OCD. Like, OCD people cannot have this much crap. Right. Like, knock it off. But it seems, oh, I'm just ADHD, or I have autism. No, you don't. Quit diagnosing yourself off TikTok. Knock it off. Like, go see a specialist. Like, it's become... And it's such a hot term, and I get very flustered with it because I have parents that are labeling their kids with it that are not
correct.
That.
Oftentimes it's the parent that's projecting that on them. I mean, that's a little out of my scope, but that's definitely something that I see.
Total projection. It's because their bestie, her kid has it. So it's like, no, I have kids that they've got tics, they've got things they do, and they can't control it. They are in that. You're just saying that because you're not disciplining your child and teaching them how to focus.
Sure.
Or you're pumping them full of just absolute trash.
Toxins, thoughts, traumas, toxins.
Trash, whether it's verbal
so now your nervous system's dysregulated, and that's
like,
what that looks
like. He's all over the place. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had a latte at 7 for breakfast. Right. Like, he's probably having a rough day. He's got enough caffeine and to jumpstart a lawnmower. Like, come on.
And that's also part of what I do, especially with these intensives with kids and the primitive reflex integration is, staying within my scope and knowing I'm just a part of the care team. I think a lot of us, honestly, we give a lot of the medical professionals a little too much authority. We should be the authority over our bodies. Mm-hmm. And, I always say everything looks like a nail to a hammer, so you have to remember what hammer you're talking to. Yes. So from my perspective, I'm going to come at it with, I do think acupuncture, chiropractic, or, these primitive reflex integrations are the way to go. But here's why. Here's what I'm thinking. Go talk to your primary about it. Go talk to your, whoever you're working with for mental health about it. Because I want to be a part of that care team and give you other perspectives and help you kind of sift through the weeds of data. But that's all we're really doing is giving you data about your body so you can decide how you want to move forward with it.
And making a responsible decision.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing too is making the decision to do it. Like people, oh yeah, well I know that doing that ice bath thing's pretty tough. Yeah, it sucks. Mm-hmm. You never get used to it. The water, you never get to a point where you're like, water's not cold anymore. No,
sure.
It sucks all the time. Point. And there's a lot of days that I will stand there and Casey's like, oh my God, are you getting in or not? And
I'm like, talking myself into it. Hyping myself up.
Yeah, I used to get really mad at myself, and I heard Rogan was talking about it one day, and he's like super amped on it, and he's like, dude, there are days that I'm like, listen. He goes, I'll be standing there going, listen, we're doing this. And he said, but my inner bitch is like, nah, I don't really want to today.
For sure.
And he goes, and I have to have that argument. And he goes, next thing you know, I'm like, oh, look at this podcast. I think I'm going to watch this podcast. Oh, I think I'm going to have breakfast. Oh, I think I'm going to do a little yoga. And he's like, get your ass out there. I do the same thing.
We got to audit ourselves constantly and be like, am I in alignment with my goals here?
But I know it makes me feel better.
Yeah.
So I do it. And that's the other thing with you educating and taking that time to build that relationship with the customer. You're able to help them figure out, okay, Do I need this? I've been put in that situation a lot at the martial arts school. Someone will be like, "Oh, I'm really struggling with the X, Y, and Z." We need to have a serious conversation about your weight.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing I can teach you on that kick that's going to make it better when you're X amount of pounds over to where your body is just
limited, physically
limited.
Yes,
you are physically limited. You're going to find adaptations, but if you truly want to do it right, we need to talk. Not that there's anything wrong. Everybody live and be who you want to be, but don't come to me and say, "Hey," and it's been both ways. It's been both ways because I've explained to some of my students that are a little heavier, you're going to kill it in kata competitions, but you may struggle a little bit in point fighting because speed is so important. Like, it depends on who you're going against.
Sure.
But hey, you're a little, for Canada, I cut weight because I was going to fight. Everybody kept telling me your forms look really good. Your kata look good, but you, a little more 20 pounds heavier a year later. Cardiff, Wales, cut weight. Canada, I was 20 pounds heavier intentionally.
Sure.
And people are like, "Man, the power this year." So I explained to my students, I've explained to Kendall, if you really want to get serious, we got to bulk you up. You got to have a little more weight on you,
Yeah, muscles to get those fast twitch fibers going.
It's just the way the beast works.
Yeah.
But you have to make that decision. What do you want to do? Do you want to do this? Like, I lost weight because I wanted to do that. I gained weight because I wanted to do that. That was my goal. So but that comes from having those conversations, having that bond. And that sounds like that's truly what you're building.
Yeah.
And it seems to be working really well for you. I know from the outside looking in, every time I see something, like, I know you had so much anxiety about your posting and social media stuff, and you've killed it. You've done so good with it. It's really great to see. Now, if somebody's wanting to contact you and book and come in and see you or find anything about you, what is the best ways to find you?
I would say the website's fantastic, rootedalignment.com. And on there, you can schedule straight from the website.
Nice.
You can request a free consultation to come in and talk to me, come up with an idea about what kind of trajectory we're looking at for you, what your goals are, things like that. My number is on the page too, but it's 573-742-8065. You can call or text that. Hope answers the phone, and both of us have access to the text, so we'll get back pretty quickly.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Well, thank you for coming on today.
Thanks for hosting and having me.
I'm just super excited seeing this whole journey for you, meeting when you came into Taekwondo, watching you go into jiu-jitsu, doing all the chiropractic work, the whole road for you that you've been down. And then now it's like when I came in this morning for the adjustment, just seeing everything come together is just super. I don't know. I'm a builder when it comes to that stuff, and I just love seeing it. That's why I think eventually I'll get into helping martial artists build and stuff, because I just love that. My buddy Brett opened his school. I got to paint it, and I was like just so pumped.
Yes.
I just love that whole process of that building.
Well, and it's so cool getting to bring like your passions all together in your hometown, in this area that you want to serve this community and see everyone thrive. It's awesome.
Seeing you bring that together, seeing you talk about, man, I just get an office, I could do this, and then all of a sudden you're like, I found a place. Let's see, and then to walk in and see it's real, but to see your personal touch to everything, and it's you, and to know that when you walk in, because I know when I walk into school, I don't walk into school and say, oh, I could change this to be like so-and-so. I walk in, I'm like, no, this is how I like it.
Yes.
The only thing I've ever done, Stephen Thompson, Wonderboy Thompson, their school in upstate New York is pretty freaking cool. They have a coffee shop.
Oh, cool.
It's dope.
Sure.
If I ever got to the size that something like that was feasible, because they have like a weight area, they have a few things, like I could see doing something like that, but my twist, like I wouldn't want to carbon copy it.
Right.
But really, I've never walked into a dojo that I was like, I love this. I would do this over mine. Mine is me. And I know when you walk into your office, that is you. It screams you.
Yes, I'm inspired by my patients and by what people need. That's how Kaylee and I and Hope together have created play shops. It's like a workshop, but more fun.
Yeah.
Pretty much monthly, maybe bi-monthly. And it's just based off of what people need. I noticed a lot of, our last one was called Primal Mother, because a lot of the women I was working with were having a hard time identifying with themselves outside of their role as a mother. And so like really getting into who are you though? And like what are your mother wounds, both above and below? Doing some umbilical release and getting into some heavy stuff, but in a way that served a small group in a really powerful way. And then our next one will be based on what the trend is then. And there is kind of a law of attraction that I've noticed in this practice. Right now I have 14 breast cancer survivors I work with.
Wow.
And none of them knew each other first, besides a mother-daughter duo. They've all just kind of found me. And I was not an expert in breast cancer at all before this, but I know they're the authority over their bodies. So I ask the questions. I start to put the pieces together. I start to gather resources. Now I've got a tattoo artist that does amazing 3D art that I can send them to. Cool. I think it's Faith Through Fire is the Breasties podcast. And it was actually one of my pediatric patients' mothers that connected me to that. And it's been super neat to build that network, but also they kind of have a peer group of someone struggling with really intense lymphedema after getting their lymph removed in their axilla, feeling kind of disheartened about that.
Yeah.
But then as they're coming in, someone that has gone through it and is now looking like me, they're not retaining lymph because they've done all their stuff. They know how to do the manual drainage, getting to connect them together and see like the real medicine in that moment wasn't the adjustment or the manual drainage I was teaching her to do. It was the hope she got from seeing another survivor.
It's a community.
Exactly.
It's a community you're building, and
weaving
that's
it together.
Exactly.
And so I'm kind of interested to see like what the next wave is. And like I said, I went to that brain-based analysis workshop, and after that, more and more neurodivergent kids started coming into my practice. Like you just stay open to it.
I want to talk to you about that, doing some type of workshop at the school. I've been talking to some different people about starting to do some community workshops on neurodivergency to educate, because I know the stuff that we got from having Dr. Workmeister in was amazing for the students. I had a lot of parents reach out, and so I've been toying with something as we get into next school year to focus on offering some community-based stuff at the school, that bringing people in to offer to not only our people but to everyone else, that would ties everybody in together. Because if I have a student I'm working with that's neurodivergent, but they're going to you for adjustments and getting better and doing different therapies and doing stuff that's going to then it's all going to benefit that person.
Sure, it primes their system, of course.
It's all going to help. And so that's something that as we get our Saturdays dialed in, I just had to tweak them the other day, and I'm getting ready to tweak them a little bit more before next that's
part of the
May.
process,
finding
what works
as
for
it's
you.
growing, and I'm trying to leave some space, because I know as the summer gets here, Saturdays are going to be slower, but then in the winter in our area, Saturdays are really busy.
Yep.
So I'm trying to leave some space and build some, so I'm not constantly tweaking it.
Yeah.
But Saturdays are wild, but I would like to get to where it's like, okay, this is this time, and then, okay, here's a block at late in the afternoon that we could offer these family workshops and make it a thing to where like twice a month we have something. Like I've got a lot of that, and I definitely want to talk to you about that. So that's really cool.
I love that. I want to also do a little bit more community acupuncture in a group, especially in addiction settings or recovering settings. Obviously, that's something that's close to my heart. My brother passed away from an addiction. My best friend Rachel did as well. So being able to have a more proactive approach to things besides just the harm reduction world.
In contact with Emil then at the Dream Center.
Yes.
They just took over Shield by Faith.
And I saw that they're going to have the gala coming up. So I'm like, get me in. Yes.
Hey, do you want to go to that? I've got a table.
I would love that for sure. Kaylee and I were just talking about that because she wants to go too.
See if she wants to go. Because we bought a table. And I just asked Casey the other night, I'm like, because I went out to support a meal. I'm like, who are we? I was like, we need to figure out some people to invite but I wanted to invite people that would be beneficial to the Dream Center.
Yes.
To go, not just somebody. It's like, man, I ain't got nothing to do Thursday. Like I wanted to find some people. So
no, I want to get connected because I can make it so accessible. Like instead of coming in for a $65 acupuncture session, when you do it in a group setting, we can make it a lot more affordable.
Taken over Shield by Faith.
That's what you were saying. So now they've got the women's aspect too.
That's going to be the Dream Center on Main Street.
Very
now.
Cool.
So that would be really cool for you to get involved with. So we'll do that. So
awesome.
Well, thank you again for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
We're good.
Awesome.